Hey everybody, here's a little screen recording about the if statements lesson. This is lesson 4 of the control structures unit. Going to go through this and give you a few hints as we go through. So talking about if statements. We're skipping Carol, so you didn't see that. This is the basic format of an if statement. You always start with the word if. You have parentheses right here that hold a Boolean expression. So whatever is in here has to equate to a true or false value. Okay. And then we have our open brackets. Every open bracket has to have a closed bracket. Everything inside of those brackets is what is run if this expression is true. So any code that you want to execute if the expression is true goes right inside of here. Our if statement always lines up with kind of the furthest left of our code, and the closing bracket lines up on that same line. As we're in the editor, there is a real small line that you can see going down through there. Indentation is important. So anything in between, every time you open a bracket and hit enter, it automatically does one tab over. Anything between brackets needs to be one tab over. Okay, just like an outline in English class, every time you go down further, you have to have an indentation. So an if-else statement does the same exact if. Okay, so here's our if, here's our open and close bracket, Boolean expression, code to run if it's true. But now, if we have code that we want to run if the value is false, we have that here. Okay, so an else by itself does not have a Boolean expression. If you try to put a Boolean expression with an else, you will get an error. Okay, so else just means the opposite of this. So if this is true, we run this code. If this is false, we come down to the else and we run this code. Again, the else goes right after the bracket. It has its own open bracket, its code, and a closed bracket, all on the same line right here. Okay, it's a basic if-else format. Here's an example of an if statement. Really basic if statement. We read in a number from the user, var number, read int number. If that number that they give us is less than 0, then we tell the user the number is negative. So if number less than 0. So this is why we did those comparison operators in the previous lesson. This is where we're going to use them. So if number is less than 0, that evaluates to a true or false statement, and then we can print the value based on that. Another comparison operator is the double equal sign. Remember, one equal sign means that we are setting the value. So we are setting the value that the user gives us into the variable name. The if statement checks to see if that value or that variable is equal to this value. Okay, so an if statement always has to have two equal signs in here. If that is true, then we print great name. And I'll show you some more examples shortly. Here's an if-else statement. Now, back when we learned about the modulus, I told you that we will be using that to find if something is equal most of the time, okay? 98% of the time. So here's an example of that. We ask the user for a number. They give us a number. Any even number divided by 2 has a remainder of 0. So if we take a number and we modulate it by 2, we are getting the remainder from the number, from the division problem. If that is a 0, that means that that number is even. So any number modulated by 2, if that equals 0, that number is always even. Any odd number modulated by 2 will equal a 1. Okay, think of like a 9. 9 divided by 2 is 4 with a remainder of 1. Okay, so if I do 9 mod 2, I can equal 1. Anytime you want to see what a number modulated by, if you go to Google and just type MOD right here instead of the percentage sign, it will do it for you. So you could do 9 mod 2 and Google will actually show you the answer for that. Okay, if the number mod 2 is not equal to 0, comes down here and lets us know that we are odd. Okay, so this is something you will really want to keep in your head. Num mod 2 equals 0 is even if we have an even number, is true if we have an even number. Okay, you'll want to remember that. Here's one more example. We have a secret word variable holding this value. We have a password variable holding what the user gives us. If the secret password variable is equal to the password variable, then they match. Okay, and this is basically every time you log in, the code that happens. Okay, a little bit more complicated, of course, but this is the basic idea of how that happens. So let's look at some of these examples real quick. I'm going to go to the name one. Okay, so we saw this. We enter a name. If the name is Jeremy, it's a great name. However, what if we are checking multiple names? We want to know if they entered one of 4 names, for example. Okay, then we can't just use an else, because else is just anything other than Jeremy. But I want to know specific names. Okay, so there's what is called an else if. An else if does have an expression, a Boolean expression. So if name equals, we'll go with Coach Floyd. Okay, same brackets, I can print line, another great name. Okay, then say I still have another one, I can go else if name, equals Bob. Having trouble typing. Then what I can do is I can say print line, great name again. A little bit different there. And okay, so then say that was all I was looking for. I can still put an else, right? And then on the else, this is kind of my default where I can say not here, something like that. Okay, so using these else ifs, I can string together as many as I want, and always want to have a default down here. We saw these; those don't change much. So let's look at your program. Write a program that prompts the user for their age. So ask the user for their age, and tell them if they're a teenager. They are a teenager if their age is greater than or equal to 13, and remember our logical operators from lesson 2. So stringing together comparisons and logical operators. Okay, and less than equal to 19. All the dietary restrictions. We're going to ask the user what their dietary restrictions are. The user will give us one of 3 answers. They won't just say yes or no. They will either type in the word vegetarian, in which case we provide veggie burger. They will either type in lactose intolerant, in which we return with a print line, no cheese, or they will say none, in which we put no alterations. Okay, so here's an example. I ask any dietary restrictions. If they type in lactose intolerant, I produce no cheese at the end. Okay, you will use an else if in this problem, just one. All right, I hope this is helpful, and I hope that after this one, when you complete lessons 1 through 4, you will want to take the 1 through 4 quiz on Canvas, and I hope you have a good day.